All right, so today we are going to do a deep dive into the mission blue butterfly. We've got some excerpts here from an article titled "The Mission Blue Butterfly, a Symbol of Conservation." This little creature really has quite a story to tell.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The mission blue butterfly has really become a symbol of conservation here in the U.S.
So before we get into all of that, can you just give us like a visual? What does this butterfly look like? What makes it so unique?
Well, the mission blue is really interesting because it's so delicate, yet it's also really resilient at the same time. The males have these vibrant blue wings with black edges, and the females have actually evolved to have a more subdued brown coloration, which helps them blend in when they're laying eggs.
Wow, that's really cool. It's like camouflage for survival. So where do these butterflies actually live? Because our source mentions some pretty specific locations.
Yeah, so the mission blue is super picky about its habitat. You'll only find it in these coastal grasslands and scrublands, mostly in the San Francisco Bay Area. So think like San Bruno Mountain or even parts of Twin Peaks. And here's the thing. They totally depend on three very specific types of lupine for survival.
Wait, lupine, like at the flower?
Exactly. The lupines aren't just pretty. They're absolutely essential for the mission blue's life cycle. We call them host plants, because the female butterflies will actually lay their eggs directly on the lupine, and then the caterpillars feed only on the leaves. So no lupine equals no mission blue butterflies.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure on those plants, which actually makes me think about something else that the article mentioned, the threats to the mission blue's survival. It sounds like this butterfly is really facing an uphill battle.
Unfortunately, yeah. That dependence on those specific lupines makes the mission blue super vulnerable, and the threats just keep piling up.
So let's break down those threats. The article mentioned habitat destruction as a major issue.
Right, so imagine you're this mission blue butterfly, and all of a sudden you're home. Those grasslands
Mhm.
are being bulldozed to make way for development. It's happening all across the Bay Area, and it's really shrinking the butterfly's habitat and fragmenting those populations.
Oh, man. That's just heartbreaking. And then there's the problem with invasive species, too, right?
Yeah, invasive plants are a huge threat. It's kind of insidious, really. These plants that don't belong here, they move in and they just start outcompeting those native lupines. It's almost like a slow takeover,
Yeah.
and it's slowly depriving the mission blue of its essential food source.
So we've got habitat loss, we've got invasive species, and then there's the big one, climate change. The article painted a pretty grim picture of its potential impact.
Yeah, so climate change is like a threat multiplier. It disrupts that delicate balance of the whole ecosystem. So you can imagine like more frequent droughts would stress out the lupine, and altered weather patterns would mess with the butterfly's breeding cycle.
So that's a lot for this little butterfly to handle. And reading this article, I was wondering if we can reverse this. Like, can we actually turn things around for the mission blue? I mean, is it possible? I know it does feel kind of overwhelming, but thankfully there's another side to the mission blue story. The article also talked about all this conservation work that's happening to actually try to save this butterfly.
Yeah, definitely a lot of work going on and a lot of reason for hope. Back in 1976, the mission blue was listed as an endangered species
Yeah.
under the Endangered Species Act. And that was a huge turning point.
Okay, so what did that actually do for the butterfly? I mean, did the Endangered Species Act like magically fix everything?
Well, not magically, no. But it did provide this legal framework. And it also gave things a real sense of urgency. So that meant the butterfly's habitat was more protected. And most importantly, it really spurred all these conservation efforts.
Yeah, the article mentioned things like habitat restoration and invasive species removal. So can you give us a picture of what that looks like? Like, what are people actually doing out there in the field?
Well, imagine teams of scientists and volunteers all working together, literally rebuilding the mission blue's home. They're carefully planting these native lupines, and they're going in and clearing out all these invasive plants. And they even use controlled burns.
Control burns, what are those?
A controlled burn is basically fire, but it's carefully managed, and it's used to mimic natural processes. It might sound counterintuitive, but fire can actually be beneficial to some ecosystems. And in this case, those controlled burns clear out that overgrown vegetation, and that allows the native lupines to thrive.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like they're hitting a reset button on the ecosystem. And the article mentioned some specific groups, like the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy.
Yeah, they're doing incredible work, along with other organizations and tons of dedicated people. They've got these volunteers out there planting lupines, monitoring the butterfly populations, and also educating the public about how important conservation is.
So it sounds like a real community effort. And are we actually seeing results from all this work? Like, are things getting better for the mission blue?
Well, there's reason to be cautiously optimistic. The butterfly definitely still faces a lot of challenges, But these conservation efforts are really making a difference. In some areas, we're actually seeing those mission blue populations stabilize. And in some of the protected areas, there's even evidence of slow but steady growth.
That's awesome. But I gotta ask, is it enough? I mean, you mentioned before that climate change is a big wild card. Is all this effort going to be for nothing if climate change keeps disrupting the ecosystem?
That is the million-dollar question. Climate change is a huge concern, and we don't really know the long-term impact on the Mission Blue. But here's the thing. This conservation work that's happening right now, it's buying us time. It's giving the butterfly a chance to fight while we're trying to figure out this whole climate change situation.
Okay, that makes sense. And it makes me think about something the article said about the mission blue being a symbol for something bigger. It's not just about saving one butterfly, is it?
Not at all. The Mission Blue's story really reflects these larger environmental problems. It reminds us that everything is connected. And even these little creatures
Yeah.
can have a big impact on the health of a whole ecosystem.
That's so true. So I'd love to hear from you, the listener. What's resonating with you the most from our deep dive so far? What's standing out to you?
Okay, so we're wrapping up our deep dive into the world of the Mission Blue butterfly. And even though this little creature has some big challenges ahead of it, I'm feeling optimistic after learning about all this amazing conservation work that's being done.
Oh, absolutely. It really is inspiring to see what dedicated people can do when they put their minds to it. And you're so right. It's not just about one butterfly. It's about a whole ecosystem, you know?
Yeah, the article really made that connection clear. The Mission Blue's fate is tied directly to the health of those coastal ecosystems it lives in.
It is. It's like the mission blue is a canary in a coal mine. If it's
Yeah.
declining, it's telling us that something is wrong. Something's out of balance in those coastal grasslands and scrublands. Right? It's like you pull one piece out of a Jenga tower, and suddenly the whole thing is in danger of collapsing.
Exactly. It's all connected. The loss of one species can trigger a domino effect and impact the entire web of life in that area.
So what can we learn from the Mission Blue story about the future of conservation, I mean? Can we use what we've learned here to help protect other species that are in trouble?
Oh, definitely. The Mission Blue gives us this sort of blueprint for conservation success. It shows us how important early intervention is and habitat restoration and how critical it is to get the community involved.
Yeah, and it highlights that we need to think big picture, right? We can't just try to save one species at a time.
Exactly. We need to look at the root causes,
Hmm.
like habitat destruction, climate change, and all these unsustainable practices.
That's a lot to tackle, but the Mission Blue shows us that it's possible.
It is, with enough dedication and collaboration. And by understanding these complex systems, we can make a difference.
Absolutely, and it's not just up to scientists and experts either, right? We can all play a part in this.
That's so true. Every single person can contribute to protecting the planet's biodiversity.
Okay, so for our listeners out there, what can they do? What actions can they take?
Well, there are lots of ways to get involved. You can support conservation organizations. You can volunteer your time. Make sustainable choices in your everyday life, like reducing your carbon footprint or being mindful of the products you buy. And you can talk to people about conservation, raise awareness, inspire others to take action.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. I hope you, the listener, are leaving with a better understanding of the Mission Blue butterfly and all the challenges it's facing, but also all the incredible work that's being done to protect it.
And I hope you're feeling inspired to make a difference.
Yeah. So one last thought before we go. Think about a place you love in nature, maybe a favorite park or a forest or even just your own backyard. What small changes are you seeing there that might be hinting at a bigger problem for the ecosystem? Take a moment to really think about that. Because even the smallest actions, multiplied by millions of people, can have a huge impact. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.